Hey, what's up, guys? It is Metagames GX here, and I want to talk about Dragon Tail because in the OCG, the Justice Hunters deck building pack, which has yet to be announced in the TCG but should be probably coming in late summer, it is right now shaking up the metagame. The OCG ban list just dropped today, and it is effectively killing pure Ryzeal and hurting Maliss a lot. So these three new decks on release, even before the ban list dropped, ended up taking the OCG tournament scene by storm. Basically, Dragontail, Yummy, and K9 are all extraordinarily meta viable in that when these come out in the TCG, we should expect them to be around the top decks. You know, even in a meta with Maliss and Ryzeal post Alliance Insight, Dragontail, Yummy, and K9 were still able to perform. Similarly to how Ryzeal was able to basically be the best deck even a week before it got hit in the TCG ban list. So I want to talk about specifically the Dragontail deck today because this is the one that I am personally most interested in as a fusion player. You guys know I love branded, and this engine can also use branded cards actually quite effectively. And I think the pure deck is what most people in the OCG have been using. So I have a few different deck lists I want to show you guys and then talk about what the deck is trying to do, how to play it, and we're going to get into the combos. And so this is going to serve as like an basically a guide for Dragontail for people looking to get into the deck. I know it's basically 6 months away from coming out in the TCG, but I know OCG players will like this. And then also, I think people looking to get a head start on the next format will be able to check out this deck in full force with this kind of video. I'm going to show you guys all the 1-card combos, all the 2-card, and also I do have a spreadsheet where I do have a bunch of other Dragontail combos on it. So if you guys want to see that, I have like 15 plus Dragontail combos. So I'm going to show you guys my list on Dueling Book for right now, and then we're going to kind of see the tournament report scene and tell you guys what each card does one by one so you guys get familiar with the Dragontail cards. So this is Dragontail Femina. This is a spellcaster level 5, so you're obviously never normal summoning it, but that's not the point. It's a spellcaster that you're able to use from hand on either player's turn as a quick effect. During the main phase, you can discard this card and fusion summon one dragon or spellcaster fusion from your extra deck, using monsters as on your hand or field as material, and as you guys will see, all the Dragontail monsters have the same effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a material for a fusion summon, you can set one Dragontail spell or trap card from your deck. Now, a few of them have other effects, such as like board breaking effect or recurrence, but they all have that base effect where you can set one Dragontail spell from your deck. So that means basically when you use these cards as fusion material, they always pay for themselves with another starter, which is really cool to see because traditionally fusion decks really do have a material resource sometimes. That's why things like branded fusion really kind of broke fusion summoning and why it was able to, go through and cut above the rest. So this card is really broken because it can generically make a dragon or spellcaster fusion monster. So that should tell you the stuff in your extra deck is going to be probably spellcasters or dragons that you want to make. So, I mean, like I said, like you guys can see, Chaos Star Source, prime target because it is a generic dragon as well, but the Dragontail fusion boss monsters, currently 2 in Dragontail Grimmel and Dragontail Aetherion, and we'll get to them after once we get through the main deck monsters, but they're both dragons, so, and one's a spellcaster as well, so that's all good. And I think that the best fusion monsters in the game are dragons and spellcasters, so it really is fine. Like, you can use things like Shadal Winda, and this card generically means that you can actually use it with other decks too. That's why things like Dragon Maid, Magistus, and Branded have really been the sub engines that Dragontail has been also playing around with. But you guys actually do see in the OCG a lot of the Dragontail decks that have been topping, basically going like 5-1, 6-0 at a lot of these local tournaments. And they are doing the pure version. They're like, I saw a Magistus list, I saw a slightly Shadal list, but even then I'd consider that to be pure. So like if you guys see right here, we do have still, this is more of like a board breaker approach. which is kind of cool going second because some of the cards are good going second. But as you guys see, there's actually a lot of pure going on right now because the cards all work really well with themselves. So let's go on and explain the rest of the cards. So Femina, this is a automatic 3 of in the pure build. I would argue really in any of the builds, I think Femina, if you're running a lot of Dragon Tail cards, you kind of need to run this at 3 because it is one of your best starters if you're able to have another Dragon Tail in hand if you discard Femina. And any other hand trap, you automatically get Altharion and you basically do full Dragon Tail combo automatically. And it's very easy to recur her also because you have Dragon Tail Urgula, which is another level 6. So there's a lot of bricks in this deck, quote unquote, but like they're such good extenders that they aren't really bricks. So this is a dragon level 6. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can set one for a fusion summon. You can set one Dragon Tail spell or trap. Okay, and then you can destroy one spell or trap on the field. So this is very good. Going second, this is what you guys will see, that a lot of the Dragon Tail monsters have these effects to help break the board going second, which is very solid. And then also, if this card is in the graveyard, it has a separate activatable effect that you can target one spellcaster Dragon Tail monster in your graveyard and place this card to the bottom of the deck. And if you do, add that monster to your hand. So Urgula is kind of how you recur the Femina so that you always have Femina in rotation on your opponent's turn, because you'll use Femina a lot of the time in your standard like one card combo that goes through like Rahu or Lucias, but you always want to, if you're able to recur that, which you are as long as you go through Urgula, which you typically go through all the names, maybe not even Mulr, but Urgula is one of the better ones to set because of getting back Femina, because obviously that means once you've used all your monster's effects, or even before that, you're going to be able to use, you know, these bodies that you can recur very easily, as you guys will see, and, you know, make other fusion boss monsters that are more generic, such as Chaos Star Source. I think Magnum the Reliever is probably the most generics because all it needs is a special summon monster from the extra deck and one monster from the hand. So this will likely be always live when you're really doing the Femina on your opponent's turn, which will allow you to pop another card. But obviously, if you have other things like King of the Swamp, perhaps, which we've seen a lot of those builds, Femina is able to make a dragon or spellcaster, so you're able to make things like Dragoon, which is pretty crazy, or even like Mirror Jade, if you want to get a little less toxic, and then also Sanctifier if you want to get a little bit more toxic. Also, you can make Philia Regis, which is one of the newer fusion monsters. I don't think it's actually that easy to make in this deck yet. They need another really big dragon to do that. But obviously, you can run Bestial Lubellion if you want to do Philia Regis plays as well, which I do have combos on my spreadsheet to show you guys if you want to see that. But now let's talk about Lucias, which is the best quote-unquote one-card starter. It is a one-card starter as long as you have another hand trap in hand, or basically a monster in hand, which is, you know, that is overall fine. So, like, basically, if it's normal or special summon, it's a level 4 spellcaster. You can add one Dragon Tail monster from your deck to your hand. And so you typically get Femina off of this, because then you can discard Femina and then fuse off the Lucias plus your, you know, whatever, your hand trap, your dead Mulcharmy in hand, you know, maybe another Dragon Tail monster, so you get a +3 when you resolve the Femina, which is pretty crazy. And I think this is a 3 of for the most part. It also just sets a spell trap card, obviously, when it's used. So you can obviously just use the body after you search it to fuse it off with Rahu. And we'll get into that, which is Dragon Tail's branded fusion, which is why this deck also is quite broken, because they have their own branded fusion. So, and then Dragon Tail Mulr, this was the card that really got me interested in the archetype once it got its support, because this also helps bridge with branded. It is the only dark or light, you know, Dragon Tail. There's no light Dragon Tail yet. Probably in the next wave of support, it will be a light spellcaster, so that it synergizes with the rest of the, you know, the Allure Queen stuff. There, you know, Luluwal Lilith, there's already a lot of light spellcaster support, so it just makes sense to me. But having a dark dragon is really cool, because that helps like synergize with things like Chaos Star Source and Borreload and other just dragon-based strategies, and it is the Cartesia of the deck, essentially. During the main phase, quick effect, It is a quick effect, mind you. You can fusion summon one Dragon Tail fusion from your extra deck using monsters on your hand or field. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except for fusion monsters. And then also, when sent to the graveyard's material for fusion summon, you can set one Dragon Tail spell or trap from the deck, and then you can negate the effects of one face-up monster your opponent controls. So obviously this is also a board breaker, which is just great. You know, you could go Branded Fusion, send this, and then Albaz, make Lubellion, and then also negate a card, and then also go into Dragon Tail combo plus Mirror Jade, right? So I do really like that. And then also, it's a 3 of in a lot of the builds I've seen in the OCG in the pure build. So, and that's what we are using right here. I'm just saying, even though you guys see an Albaz, this is basically pure. And we'll get into like the Albaz stuff later in the video because it's not something I see a lot in the people in the OCG doing, but I do think that this is arguably, you know, this is something that you can still be doing. I'm still working on ratios. So this card's at 3, and honestly, it could possibly go to like 2 because you want to be able to summon Lucias, and that's like 6 normals, but they're all like really good fodder, right? Like you want to, as long as you see Dragon Tail names, you're playing the game, which is what I like about this deck, honestly, because you can play around like Imperm, Ash very easily with Femina, which is very good. I think this deck plays around hand traps very well and doesn't summon that much, so you always play around Nib. And you have the ability to run hand traps, obviously, because this deck obviously wants monsters. You know, you need another monster with, you know, how the Dragon Tail fusions are listed. Basically, Dragon Tail Etherion needs one Dragon Tail monster plus one monster in the hand. And this also needs, Grimmel needs one Dragon Tail monster and one Dragon Tail, or one monster in the hand. So typically, you know, you'll have like whatever it is. You'll have the Lucias on field, and then you're able to, you know, search out your Femina, and then you fuse off the hand trap and then make that. And this card's broken. This card is absolutely insane. It's an extender and a board breaker for the deck. If this card is fusion summon, you can target monsters on the field and or in the graveyard up to the number of monsters used for material is in the hand. And you can use multiple monsters in the hand, which is kind of neat. And then you can return them to the hand. So this is a nice way to board break, and also it's a nice way to extend because you would think this is only a board breaker, but also you can target monsters in your graveyard as well. So if you're on turn 1, typically you are going to recur the Femina after using Femina to go into him, and then you're also able to trigger your other Dragon Tail effects. So you can kind of see how this all works together, lots of synergy in there. And it's a 3,000 body level 8 dragon, so there's other synergies with things like that. Grimmel is more of the end board piece because when you activate a Dragon Tail card or effect, quick effect, you can target one card your opponent controls and pop it. And they both have an effect in the graveyard. If 2 monsters are sent to the graveyard at the same time while this card in the graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. So, you know, you can like link these guys off. You can also fuse them off very easily and then get them right back because obviously they already need to be in the graveyard, but you're usually fusing probably twice on your opponent's turn, just depending on things. So like I would also say that, you know, Grimmel also helps you, and then Etherion, like they are able to be bodies that you can use up pretty well and then recur, which is really nice, especially with Etherion. And it's an extender, so you love to see it. Almost has like a Constellar M7 effect, Altharion, which is really cool. And those are the only Dragon Tail boss monsters. Also, we have Dragon Tail Pan. It's just the same thing. It's another brick. I've seen some people run 3 of this. I completely disagree. If you draw too many of these plus Urgula, you are dying on top of, so like I just don't agree with that. But Pan is able to obviously do its thing. Sass Dragon Tail spell with trap, and then you can destroy one card on the field, which is really cool. And then its other effect, if a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by your opponent's card effect while this card is in the graveyard, you can place this card on the bottom and special summon one non-fusion Dragon Tail from your graveyard. So it's just nice body recurrence, kind of like an Alubra-like effect. And typically you send these 2 off of the Rahu, which is the Dragon Tail branded fusion. Fusion summon one Dragon Tail fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand, deck, or field as material, but you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. So it's not like branded fusion where like you can't special summon the whole turn from like other things on fusion, which is nice. So that's why you see a lot of Dragon Tail builds actually run Cross Sheep, Heretic Seals, and like SP and stuff like that. I've also seen stuff like the Dragon with Eyes of Blue, which because like you can just like link off Lucias for whatever that's, you know, is to convert into a Seals better. So that's actually why I like, but obviously for these guys, you need a monster in hand. So it's not like as broken as Branded Fusion because you obviously need a card in hand for the most part to get value out of these Dragon Tails being summoned, or else they, basically can't be. So I do really like this card. It's broken. It is full combo if you resolve it, right? So, and it plays through hand traps too because you can end up like chain blocking with all the triggerable Dragon Tail effects. It's just absolutely busted. Branded Fusion like effects are nuts. Then you have Ketsu Dragon Tail, which is basically, and this is like a board breaker as well, because obviously all these Dragon Tail monsters have effects in the graveyard that help board break. So this deck is really good going second through engine. Like all these cards basically are like extra Ryzeal, like on crack, right? Because you can do 2x plus in a body, which bounces. So it's just like a crazy amount of interruptions that you just get from like one Rahu. 2 summons, by the way. In 2 summons, you get 5 interruptions, which is really crazy, off of like a 1 card combo, which is really nice. And then the Ketsu Dragon Tail is just basically a Rhoda. You can add 1 Dragon Tail from your deck to your hand. And since you're going to be resolving all these guys, you're going to go through all your spells. There are 4 spells and traps, so there's 4 monsters. So there's 5 monsters, and you typically don't need to go through all 5, so that's typically just what you need. And this card can also automatically fuse if your opponent controls a monster. So that's pretty good to going second, I guess, it helps like start your engine a little bit better. It's like a pseudo poly, which I like. Because this deck actually really wants to see poly, like I said. It like always wants to see Femina, and that's not always the case because you have to go normal summon. So I think a lot of builds have been running things like Dark Karibo, which is a new V-Jump exclusive. We don't know when we'll get in the TCG, probably sooner than later. And it is an amazing generic fusion card. If a card or effect is activated that targets a fiend or fusion monster you control, or when a fiend or fusion monster is targeted for attack quick effect, you can discard this card, then target one of them until the end of this turn. It cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Also, its effects activated in the field cannot be negated. So basically, it makes one fusion monster just unkillable. So you can't like die to Tenpai or die to OTK, which I kind of like. But the best part about it is that if this card is sent to the hand to the graveyard by card effect, you can add 1 polymerization. So it's a really good, it's like a usable hand trap, like that saves you a turn, right? And then it also gets poly. So it's like arguably, I think, more utility than King of the Swamp, which was I think why you've been seeing in some builds over King of the Swamp, or even both. But King of the Swamp is also broken because you still go even, you search poly, or you could keep it in hand and then just make Dragoon or something like that, which gives this deck a higher ceiling in my opinion, because obviously it has a pretty decent play just for like its 1 to 2 card combos. It does the same thing every time. So when you introduce King of the Swamp, it actually adds some things that are different. But like I said, you can also do link plays. So if you're like comboing correctly and then also playing through hand traps, I do think that these links really do end up coming up. I don't think, like, I've seen some people run like access code and Apo. We don't have Apo over here, but I would probably run Apo if we did the OCG. Thank God we don't. But and then the 2 traps, you run 1 of each because they basically are really broken. This is why it's so broken. You end up on 2 interruptions from the traps, and they also draw a card, which is just nuts. So you end up getting draw 2 from your standard combo. And also this card's it's a spell negate, which is pretty good. I think like get rid of Forbidden Droplet or just whatever, Bonfire, 7 Tachyon. And then you get to place 1 Dragon Tail card from your graveyard to banishment. So it like also recurs. So it's just like grind game, and then you draw 1. So it does a lot for the deck. And then this one's like the same deal, except it also returns an attack position monster to the hand / extra deck. So I guess you can you can choose on that, I believe. But yeah, no, and then you draw a card. So this deck is all about recurrence. You're never going neg from resolving poly, which I really like about this deck. So like poly's just broken. You can also run like things like patchwork in this deck because of that. I think a lot of like the Dragon Maid stuff is doing that. Not a lot of the pure variants I've seen do that, but also I think Droll's in the format. So like, when Droll's in the format, you don't quite want to run Edgem Chain, but it's something that you can consider. And then a lot of people have been running the Shadal stuff. So like basically like mainly Shadal Winda, but I've been seeing some builds with like Shekanaga as well, because Altharion's able to recur a monster in any graveyard. So if you get to the beast, you can obviously get back beast to hand and then go Femina and then fuse off into whether it's Winda or Shekanaga, and then Altharion recur the beast, and then Chickenaga actually has a negate in hand, and then you get to draw off a beast. So beast is just like really logical in this deck, in my opinion, because you're able to constantly recur it and then draw it, and then you're adding draw 3 to your combo, right? Like there's no way to bridge into Shaddoll Beast outside of Branded Fusion, for what it's worth. So I do think that, Shaddoll Beast being unsearchable, really, unless it is fine, because it's a nice one of, if you end up seeing it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. It's a great grinding game piece. This deck needs a little bit of a way to bridge into these more generic things, which is why I like the Branded Fusion. I kind of like the one of Branded Fusion because you can just toss in the deck with one Albaz, and if you see it, you basically just, you add a whole branded combo on top of your Dragon Tail end board. And then also Fallen of Albaz ends up being the best Seals summon, because without Albaz, your Seals plays are terrible, right? Like, you can summon out Mulr, but like, you're not always guaranteed to be in a situation where Mulr is going to be good, because it can only make Dragon Tail monsters. Albaz can make anything, so I would run an Albaz in this deck no matter what. I'd run an Albaz in any deck with Seals. Like, it's just way too good between the Sanctifier. Also, you can run the Eyes with Blue if you want, like, Sanctifier lock. It's a little hard to do that, though, because this deck has no light spellcasters inherently, unlike Blue Eyes, so I don't quite recommend that. I don't think you need to lock. It's a super interactive deck, and you get to, like, you're always popping cards, you're always recurring cards, and you get to run hand traps, right? Like, look at, you have space for about, like, 15 non-engine, which is really good in my opinion. And there's probably further optimizations to be had with this deck. So yeah, this was kind of like my long yapping session about the Dragon Tail deck before we actually get into the combos. So I appreciate everybody listening to that. And yeah. So, and I did just want to talk about a little bit more about the performance of these decks. So it seems like Yummy is the most topping deck right now. And now that we know that Maliss and Ryzeal are going to be really just like on the shit list, we could definitely see, basically Yummy be the best deck. I think Maliss might be the second best deck still, because it still has a lot of the things that made it good. Unlike Ryzeal. Ryzeal has like real consistency issues now, and you have to run like Ryzeal variants, and we'll see how well those do. But I do think that Dragon Tail has been very surprising. A lot of people thought Dragon Tail was going to suck because it doesn't have like a traditional one card starter. It needs like it's a 1.5, right? But it's still very good because they all just like, once you get Fusion off, you are off to the races with this deck. It's very hard to stop a Fusion unless you have to go Lucias, like, and die to Imperm, and like, you can run Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse, like Called by, Cross out. So there's a lot of things to like not just die to Imperm. And once again, this deck plays around Imperm Ash a lot, very well. So you love to see it. And you can also link summon, like this build has Typhon, SP, Cross Sheep. So it's doing surprisingly well. I think it's going to be about tier 1.5, like Yummy's tier 0.5, 1, and then Maliss is like tier 1.5. And this is going to be tier 1.5. So it's going to be a top 5 deck, I think, Dragon Tail for sure, which is really cool because there was a chance this deck was just not going to be good. But this is definitely going to be the best Fusion deck once it releases. And I think there's ways, obviously, to use it with Dragon Maids, Magicious, and also Branded. I think the Branded version is a bit, like, you're going to probably have to run a light Branded engine, but that's fine. I think Pure is currently the best, so that's why I'm saying, like, the one Albaz plus Seals into things, plus the Branded Fusion, so that Seals ends up being an onboard piece. Also, you can run, like, Lubellion, so you're always ending on Seals. So there's a lot to be, like, cooking with this deck, but I wanted to show off some combos and stop yapping about this deck. This was just kind of your, direct introduction into Dragon Tail, a deck that's going to probably come out in about 6 months in the TCG. But if you watch this video, you're going to know what it does already, and you're going to be ready to play it, really, especially if you pick up the spreadsheet. Once again, guys, link in the description. And if you already own the spreadsheet, you have these combos, for life. So as they get updated. So let's get right into it and check out these awesome Dragon Tail combos. If you guys want to see even more Dragon Tail stuff, make sure to get this video to about 300 likes, and we will do a full technical play guide with Dragon Tail, show really the intricacies and show more matchups between like Yummy and stuff like that, because I have been testing Justice Hunter with some of my friends. So yeah, guys, let's get right into the combos. Alright, so I want to show you guys the basic Dragon Tail combo, and then we will get a little bit more spicy with it, because obviously, because I want to show you guys how basically any 2 Dragon Tail cards, or just if you get Lucias or Rahu, gets you 5 interruptions on top of 2 draws. And this is just with 2 summons, so it's actually very solid in my opinion. So for this combo, we're just gonna have Dragon Tail Lucius plus a Nibiru token, or sorry, a Nibiru. So we can go normal summon Lucius, and then Lucius can search out the Dragon Tail Phymina, and then we can go Phymina, and Phymina will then fuse off the Lucius plus the monster in our hand. And then we can go summon the Dragon Tail Altharion, and on summon, Altharion will target monsters on the field or graveyard. So we're going to target the Phymina, and then Chain Link 2, we're going to go Dragon Tail Lucius, since he was used as a fusion material, to then set the Rahu Dragon Tail, which is their branded fusion. And then we recur the Phymina. And then we go Rahu Dragon Tail, and we send the Phymina to the graveyard, since we need a monster in hand. And then we also will send a Dragon Tail Urgala to the graveyard, so that we are able to summon out the Dragon Tail Grimmel, which is our next interruption, because that's a quick play pop as long as you use a Dragon Tail effect. And then on resolution, you have 2 triggers of the Urgala and the Phymina, and this will allow you to set 2 more spells and Dragon Tail spell and traps, and you're going to now set the 2 traps, the Dragon Tail Horn and the Dragon Tail Flame. Flame is a spell negate, and then Tail is a bounce. So at this point, and they both give you also a draw, plus it returns a card from the graveyard, which is quite good for the grind game. So that's 2 interruptions off the trap plus draw 2, and then you also get a pop off Grimmel. And then also Urgala also does destroy spell and trap on the field when sent to the graveyard, obviously. And then Altharion, if you really needed to, was also another return, going second, obviously. Most of the time you're probably going to have another access to like Dragon Tail, so you might not always have to use Altharion to recur the Phymina. And so at this point, we can then just set those 2 and then go Urgala effect to put itself to the bottom of the deck, to then put the Phymina into our hand, because this will be another interruption that we can use on our opponent's turn. And then we can pass to our opponent, and at this point we could use the Dragon Tail Horn. Dragon Tail Horn will then obviously bounce a monster. This will negate a spell, and you'll also get the pop off Grimmel, and then you can also go Phymina to then end up summoning, just depending on what your draws are, obviously. You can end up going into things like Chaos Star Source, Magnum the Reliever, use the Altharion in the graveyard, and they both have recur effects, right? So once you go Phymina, for whatever reason, if they're already in the graveyard, you can then revive it. So that's just like the standard 1-card Dragon Tail combo that's very important to know. All right, so for the next standard 2-card combo that you'll use is with Dragon Tail Mulr, because this is just like a monster fuse effect. So if you open up Mulr plus any name, you can basically get to full Dragon Tail combo. So here you just go Mulr effect to fuse off itself, plus we're using Urgala in this case, but once again, it could be literally any other name. And then we can go into the Altharion, and then we can go Altharion effect to then, it doesn't really matter here, we just need to get a card back to the hand, so we're going to take the Mulr back, and then we can trigger the Mulr plus the Urgala for Chainlink 1 and 2, or Chainlink 2 and 3. And those will get us our 2 Dragon Tail spells and traps, the Ketu Dragon Tail, which is the Rhoda, and then the Ratu, which is the branded fusion, so we can then continue the combo, and we need to get whatever, just a body back to hand, so we can actually summon the other Dragon Tail name. That's why we're recurring it off of Altharion. And then here we can go Rahu Ketu Dragon Tail to obviously just get the Phymina at this point, as just a way to also play through hand traps and then also have more interruption. So at this point, we can just go Ratu Dragon Tail, send the Phymina to the graveyard. Since we have already used the Mulr, it's better to send off the Phymina. And then we can also send the Tail Pan to the graveyard, as it's another interruption, destroying a monster on the field. So all these combos are great going first and going second, which is really nice about it. And then we can summon out the Grimmel, and then we can go Chainlink 1 Pan, Chainlink 2 Phymina, and then obviously Chainlink 3 Grimmel if we're going, if your opponent has anything on the board. And then we can set the two Dragon Tail traps, the Dragon Tail Flame and then the Dragon Tail Horn, so that we have a spell negate and then a bounce on top of your Grimmel, and these two draw obviously cards. So that's very nice. And then we can go Urgula in the graveyard to then give us back the Fimina, which is very good, so that we can go Fimina if we want to make a Chaos Star Source on our opponent's turn, since we have two dragons in the Mulr and then the Altharion. So here we could obviously pass to our opponent, then go Dragon Tail Flame, Dragon Tail Horn, pop a card on our opponent's side of the field with the Grimmel. So that's currently 3 pops essentially, or 3 interruptions plus 2 draws. And then we can go find Mina if we want to. Also, we do have to get the draws, and we can go find Mina, fuse off the Mulr plus the Altharion, and then go into the Chaos Star Source. So that kind of shows you guys how, like, the combo typically works and why Fimina is an amazing crackback, because then you get to pop 2 off a Chaos Star Source. Actually, you only get to pop 1 because it is you use a Earth for the 1, but that's totally fine in my opinion. And then Mulr can obviously give you a Rahu Dragon Tail for the crackback, which is very good. So, yep, that's the other standard combo with Dragon Tail that you need to know. And the reason why these are all good is that this is all under Nib into 2 summons, plays through Ash and Imperm, which is just really crazy. Like, obviously they can just, like, Imperm your Altharion, but you're gonna have other cards, and obviously all you have to do is resolve the graveyard effects. I think that's why, like, Dragon Tail is also just so strong, because it's very hard to interact with their very important effects. It's almost like Malice, where, like, traditional, just like non-engine, like, no one's running, like what's stopping a Mulr, what's stopping a Fimina in graveyard from resolving? Nothing really. So, like, that's why I think it's just super broken. You kind of just have to let Dragon Tail play the game, which is really crazy. And the combos are super low to the ground, so the deck is able to grind super hard, and you're able to recur and keep a really nice card advantage count going, while also just negging your opponent super hard and having, like, on-field presence, such as, like, Grimmel. And then obviously if you're running things like Seals with Albaz and stuff like that, you can do really broken stuff. And obviously you're also drawing into hand traps this whole time, right? So it's just, like, super nice in this kind of situation. All right, so I'm going to show you guys the branded combo I made that you basically get with 1 branded fusion plus 1 Lucias, and obviously the discard that you need for every Dragon Tail combo. So this is why, in my opinion, just running the 1 branded fusion plus a couple cards is probably really good in this build, so I'll show you guys that. So this combo is going to start very similar to the last 2. We are just going to do the full branded or Dragon Tail combo. We're just going to go Lucias into Fimina, fuse off the discard into Altharion, into Lucias, setting the Rahu Dragon Tail, so then we can get the Fimina back off of the Altharion, and then we can go Rahu Dragon Tail, sending the Fimina plus the Urgula, so that we can establish the Grimmel, and then get our 2 traps set up off of the Urgula and the Fimina. Okay, so everything's great. But now we use branded fusion. So you can also, if you're worried about Nib, you can also you can go branded fusion before this and just make Dragoon. That's also a thing. This is just for those types of board states or not. But this is what you're going to do if you don't want to just shotgun the Dragoon. You can go into branded fusion. This combo still plays through Dragoon, by the way. Or sorry, this combo still plays through Nib, by the way. So we go Branded Fusion. Brand Fusion is going to send the Fallen of Albaz plus the Bestial Lubellion, which is very important. Then we go into the Albion, and then Albion is going to be able to banish the Fallen of Albaz plus the Altharion on the board, since that is a extract monster, so that we can go into the Mirror Jade. So now we have the Mirror Jade established, so we can then tribute over the Albion for the Bestial Lubellion in the graveyard, and then use Bestial Lubellion's effect to get the Branded Regained, which can now help us with our grind game. Obviously, if your opponent normal or special summons a monster, you can target 1 Bestial monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So if you end up having other Bestials, that's quite good for that effect, but I think having the draw effect plus, like, recurring your banishes are quite nice. So, and then you'll get an automatic draw off the Mirror Jade, right, on your opponent's turn. And then here we can go the Urgula effect and then get the Fimina back to the hand for another interruption on our opponent's turn. And then we can go into the end phase and activate the Albion in the graveyard to then get the Brightest Blazing Branded King, which is a field negate essentially. So this is just another just kind of aspect to our field, and since we have lots of spells and traps, we can actually use this. We can just like shotgun this if we already use our Mirror Jade, right? I mean, and obviously we don't want to do that with Grimmel, but obviously with Femina, we can fuse off the Grimmel and then revive Grimmel with its own effect. So there's a lot of layering to this board that makes it so the Branded Fusion actually gives you about like 4 interruptions on top of your Dragon Tail stuff. With no discard, which is really nice. It's just the Branded Fusion. So here we could obviously start our turn on our opponent's turn and then go Mirror Jade effect, banish, send the Sanctifier. I actually updated this build to where I'm running 2 Albion now. This should be a second Albion. You should be sending a second of these Albion the Branded Dragon, so then you can recur or get back a something like a so that you can recur something. I'm running a Branded in white, for instance, which can just generically be used in this deck. So yeah, which is really cool actually. So it's just like recurring a poly for free. And then we get the banish, and then we can get the regain draw, which is our first of 3 draws in this combo. Then we can go horn to then return a card in our graveyard, and then return an attack position monster, and then draw a card, and then we can obviously go Grimmel to pop card since a Dragon Tail card was used, and then we can use Dragon Tail Flame to then recur or send back our other trap, then get a draw, and then also negate a spell in whatever order. And so that has been like 5 interruptions so far, and then you do still have the brightest blazing Branded King, and then you had everything else to this combo, right? Because going second, this combo also breaks board and it even have more interruption. Regain will keep constantly triggering, especially if you're using more Bystials, which is why in this kind of build I think I would recommend Bystials. I think Bystials would go very hard in this kind of build. And also the Bystials do help you get to the seals, so when you don't see the Branded Fusion, you can use your Bystials to make a seals to just to summon Albaz on your opponent's turn and still get to this end board anyway, even if you don't open up the Branded Fusion, which is why I think a thin Branded engine is the play with Dragon Tail. If you're running Branded Dragon Tail, I see a lot of people running like Cartesia Fusion Deployment. Nah, those cards are really bad in this deck. I just run an Albaz plus a couple, because Branded in white, for instance, like let me show you guys the list. Branded in white, for instance, can generically just be used with monsters on hand or field as long as you use a dragon, and this does not banish them either. So that as long as you have like Mulr or like a Bestial or something, you're going to be making it's a starter for Dragon Tail, and you can recur this obviously off of the second Albion that you send off of your Mirror Jade as well, which is pretty good just for the grind game. And then the brightest also just makes it a end board you can't play through, because you choose like either the Mirror Jade or Dragoon. By either way, you're going to be getting the brightest, which is just like super broken. And like I mentioned, I think that's something I'm going to consider in the future of this build is adding more Bystials, because having like the Druid Swarm in rotation seems really good. I need a way to make this a bit smaller of an engine as well, but I think the Bystials might be the way. Because just seeing Lubellion is broken. Also, Lubellion can search out Bystial Luber, which counts as an Albaz, which helps make Brandon White even better. There's just a lot to be done here, and this is just kind of the build I'm messing with a bunch of text on the side. This is what I've been seeing in most of the builds. Like, you see people running the Shadal stuff, there's the Ejim stuff, Dark Karibo if you choose not to or not, Philia Regis, Preplant Stapelia options. People are running Cross Sheep to link into the Apo or bigger link, so maybe there's a different link in our game or in TCG side that might be equivalent to an Apo for the stack. We'll have to see. I'm not too familiar with fusion links. And then also Shadal Fusion is something I've been seeing a lot in the side decks, because you can start your Dragon Tail combo, right? Because, well, not really, because you make Winda, but like you don't need to summon more than once, so you can still make Winda, summon, and then pass your opponent kind of thing, which is pretty cool. So yeah, and then there's also Construct and all that fun stuff. If you guys want to see some more Dragon Tail content, let me know down below. Hope you guys enjoyed this impromptu guide to Dragon Tail. TCG and OCG players alike for Justice Hunters. I think this is by far the most interesting of all the deck building decks, just because I do love fusions. And I think they're one of the most interesting fusion decks in a while, being able to really just go around the mechanic of fusions. you know, you're never losing. You're actually going plus off of resolving poly in this deck, which is crazy. And then also you get your own branded fusion, and you get to run hand traps, right? Like this is like 49 card build, but I definitely think that there's like a way to get this to like 44 cards. And there's a lot of builds in the OCG just on 40, right? So like I'm choosing to run a little bit more just to test ratios. And at the end of the day, we might still just remove the Albaz stuff, remove the Bastials, just run hand traps. But I want to test the power of this deck, and that's why I'm kind of doing this. And I think this build's actually just fine. It doesn't lose to any hand traps. That's why what's crazy about this too. So I think the branded fusion stuff just like helps the unboard, because the unboard isn't, it's pretty breakable in my opinion. The unboard's very good, but the point is it's like a very good going second deck too, and very good in the grind game. So I think the branded stuff just kind of solves maybe its issue going first a little bit. And then also I just love branded cards. And I do think this is genuinely a good strategy too, because I see a lot of people running like King of the Swamp into like worse fusions. I'm just like, well, you know, like if you're running seals, like people are summoning Mulr off of it. I'm just like, Albaz is such a good endboard piece. And like I said, if you open Lubellion, you get seals on top of your full Dragon Tail combo, which means you get Albaz. So you get around the fusion lock. So lots of synergies there that to consider. So with that being said, guys, I really do appreciate everyone checking out the video. Leave a like down below, and like I said, we'll release that full Dragon Tail guide if we get to like 300 likes on this. I've been testing this deck very extensively. Hopefully talk about this more in the coming months as the deck comes out as well. Probably do a refresher series once we get very close to the TCG release. And then also I'm assuming by the TCG release, we should have the second wave of support as well. And like I said, that we should be getting some like a light spellcaster, and then hopefully another fusion boss monster that helps. Maybe another trap would be nice, to be honest. But I do think the brightest is quite good. So yeah, guys, with that being said, you know, leave a like down below. Check out the, you know, shout out to all these lists on Twitter, all the people from the OCG posting their Dragon Tail stuff. That really got me interested in that. Because I was already interested in it, but like the first couple days of testing, this deck is very obviously tier 1.5. Like it's not even just like cap or anything. It's like very obviously going to be a top 5 deck. So if you like fusion cards, if you like branded, I think this is the deck forward. You can obviously use branded cards in this and still just be fine. And then also you can just run the pure version, and honestly, it's like you're resolving branded fusion. So I do really, you know, expect more Dragon Tail content once this comes out in the TCG. All right, if you guys want to see more content like this, leave a comment down below, subscribe, check out my website for my branded and Dragon Tail spreadsheet at this point, and Ryzeal if you're still interested in that deck. Plenty of Mad Games GX merch if you want to help support the channel. I stream every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe to my second channel, Mad Games 5Ds, check out my TCG player affiliate link, and join the Discord down below. All the links if you want to help support the channel down below. Also, I'm looking for a sponsor. Someone help me get a sponsor for the channel. That being said, we'll be seeing you guys later. Bye now.